Hi, I'm Julie Ross,
And I'm Gregory Abbey.
and you're listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
Julie is a longtime parent educator and counselor.
And Greg is an actor, writer, and director, and more importantly, a parent just like you.
Through conversations covering a range of different topics, challenges, and roadblocks, we hope to give you a few of Julie's tools that might just help make parenting a little bit easier.
And look, nobody's perfect, and parenting is challenging to say the least. But with a few skills under our belts, we just might be able to be good enough parents and enjoy the journey and our children a little bit more in the process.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Parenting Horizons podcast. I am here with, of course, Julie Ross. Julie, how you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you doing, Greg?
I am good. I'm excited for the holidays to come,
Me
as
too.
are my kids. Things are great. We've had a long line of great guests recently, and we have another one today. Today, we're going to be talking to your kids about sex, which is something we have talked here and there. I think we may have even done an episode way back in the day, but it's always great to revisit these kinds of topics. And our guest today is Amy Lang, who is a sexuality and parenting educator. Amy has written a book. It's called Sex Talks with Tweens: What to Say and How to Say It. So, Amy, welcome to the show. Before we jump into our conversation, can you just tell us a little bit about your history and how you got to where you are today?
Absolutely. And thanks for having me. I'm excited to talk with you too. So I did not sit in my little, junior high and think, I want to grow up and I want to be a sex educator and then I want to be a parent educator. This is my dream. Not my dream. And in my 20s, I started doing pregnancy, abortion, birth control counseling, STI counseling, totally loved it, and assumed that I was going to be a total rock star when I had kids. When it came to the sex talk, like I knew all the things. And then when my son was about 5, he was getting ready for a bath and he grabbed his penis and he said, "Hey, mama, did you know?" And I stood there and I thought, oh, please do not tell me it feels good to touch your penis because I got nothing. And I'm standing there and I did the poker face like we're supposed to do. And I said, "What?" And he said, "I can see the veins in there where the blood goes." And I said, "Great, get in the bathtub." And that was my moment of, okay, you better figure this out. So we started doing a bunch of research just for our family. And then my other part of my background is that I have a master's degree in applied behavioral science. And my focus was in adult education and group facilitation. So as I'm figuring this out, I have this brainwave and I was like, oh, maybe I can help parents talk with their kids about sex. So boom, Birds and Bees and Kids was born, and Milo was 5 or 6 when I started, and he has been mortified by my work, as you can imagine. And now he's turning 22, and he's all good.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Very cool.
You know, I do have a list of questions, but this one just occurred to me. Maybe we can start here. In your sort of experience in working with parents, what is the biggest mistake that parents make in terms of talking to their kids about sex?
Excellent question. I think the biggest mistake is they buy into all of our cultural crap about when to start the conversations. So there's all these myths, like when they ask, they're ready. When they start sex ed at school in the 5th grade, it's time to get going. That having one talk is all you need to do. And so the result of that is that the conversations are too late, they're infrequent. And when you are waiting for your kid to ask you a question about sex, they're driving the car, right? They're the boss of the conversation. And then what do you do with a kid like mine who told me he would never ask me or his dad a question about sex? So those are the biggest things. And it's understandable. Right?
It's hard.
We're terrible in our, we're in America and all that. US. So, and that's kind of worldwide, except for the Netherlands where they're all over it. But that's the biggest thing. It's just like, and avoiding, right? It's uncomfortable. I get it, right? Y'all get it.
Right.
Yeah.
Everybody gets it. But, life is uncomfortable. Parenting's uncomfortable. And this is one of the biggest things we do as human beings. We're sexual from the get go. We have romantic relationships. And it is also one of the places where we have the most lack of information in terms of childhood sexual development. We don't think that's a thing.
Hmm.
It's too bad that it's a thing, because it'd be nice if we'd be like, all right, you're 22, your brain's pretty well developed. Let's turn on a switch. Get busy.
Well, yeah, and
Right.
I think if kids are driving the car, then I would, well, except for your son, maybe, but I would think most kids are not gonna ask those questions. So, I guess the first question is then, what would you say? At what age should parents start talking to them? And obviously, I think as we talk through this, I'm assuming you're gonna say, obviously, what you're discussing with your kids depends obviously on what age they're at. So what would you say is the age you should start, and what do you start with?
Well, honestly, the very first sex talk or sex talks, one of the first talks, is using the correct names for private body parts.
Hmm.
So they have a right to know what's going on, like what those things are called. They're middle parts, right? We have vulvas, clitorises, penises, scrotums. Hate that word. All the parts. And so helping them, just doing that, right? It normalizes. These are a normal, healthy part of our body. So that's the beginning. And then,
Mhm.
everybody's worried about the penis and vagina thing. And that ideally, and this, maybe everybody should take a breath.
What do you mean when you say what do you mean when you say they're worried about it? Just because it's a difficult
You're going to
conversation?
ruin their kids, right? Like giving them too much information that somehow it's going to sexualize them.
Hmm.
Like they're going to go
Right.
out and get busy, which is just absolutely not the case. So the ideally you talk to them about, how the usual way babies are made. It's very simple. Penis enters vagina usually, and then other sperm and egg, right? And taking care of that at age 5 is, I know it sounds young, but if we can all put our rational hats on and just think about 5-year-old life,
Hmm.
right? What are 5-year-olds like?
Curious.
Open, curious. They don't know what we know. Like they're not coming into the
Right.
conversation thinking that there's anything yucky, bad, embarrassing about sex and sexuality. They don't know there's anything amazing, super fun, and cool about it. So it's really easy to capitalize on that. They're not going to notice your sweaty upper lip while you're reading a book and drinking a glass of wine or two, whatever it takes. And then the last thing is, they are starting kindergarten. They're hanging out with older kids. And
Yeah.
just like when we were kids, there was a lot of information going on. And the crappy part of all this is how much information kids are getting from the internet
Right.
and sharing.
I feel like,
Mhm.
yeah, Julie was nodding her head a lot while you were talking, because I know this is something, Julie, you've talked about before. I feel like you've said that too. And Amy, I'm assuming you would agree with this. The idea that, Julie, you start that young because for several reasons, but one of them is they're gonna get that information somewhere else if you don't give it to them, Julie.
Exactly, exactly. And, the other thing for me, as Amy was talking that I thought about, you're right, Amy. Children don't notice at a young age your sweaty upper lip and the fact that you have had to have a glass of wine in order to talk about this. But what I have found in that regard is that when parents start talking about this early, it's just more comfortable. Because if we're burying it and avoiding it, and we're referring to penises and vaginas and, the body, all the body parts as private parts as opposed to by their names, kids pick up on the idea that there's something wrong with talking about this in general. And so I think that's one of the reasons that they don't ask. I think some of the perfect entryways for this is, like, I have a 2.5-year-old grandson. He was taking a bath and he said, "I have a penis." I said, "Yes, you do." And he said, "Do you have a penis?" I said, "No." And he said, "Why?" I said, "Well, some people have penises and some people have vaginas. And occasionally people have both." And he's like, "But why?" And I said, I don't know. It's just the way it is, but there are penises and there are vaginas." And we had this whole conversation at 2.5, and there was nothing sexual about it. It was just, this is what this is, and some people have them and some people don't. It was like an elbow. What is this? It's an elbow.
Right, and if you think about it, like, we don't say, "This is my smeller," and point to our like, "This is my
Right.
smeller, that's my nose," right? You don't say that, and
Exactly.
when you say, "That's my hoo-ha," you're also sending a message that there's something different, something weird, right?
Yeah.
And I think when we say, like, "Hey," my favorite slang for, penis is tinkle waggle, um,
Oh my goodness. That's a new one to me, Amy.
we're sending a message, right? We're sending a message, and you did a great job with them. And so, just establishing this as a normal conversation in our family life, that's the other reason to start sooner rather than later, because they get used to it. Do they like it when they get to be tweeny? Who cares?
Who
Right.
cares?
Right? Who cares?
But you will have already had some of these conversations. So then when they're tweeny and you're talking about hand jobs and blow jobs and, that kind of stuff, it's not like you're bringing it up out of the blue, right? And so no tween wants to talk to their parent
Right.
about, hand jobs, blow jobs, vaginal intercourse. Nobody. No, I mean, like, I wouldn't want to talk to my parents about it, and I'm a full grown adult.
So, I'm going to give you a little correction there. Some do. In
Oh,
families
that's
that have been
good.
doing this for a really long time, and in families where they have been talking about it, and you're like, "Hey, blowjob, where are you with that? Do you know what that is?" They are like, "Oh no, what?" And you're like, "Hey, it's just something. It's a sexual thing. It's when somebody puts their mouth on another person's penis. It feels really good to them. It's something they agree to do." And you lay it out, right?
Mhm.
And it's not something you have to do, right? And so you
Mhm.
have this. I think about it in terms of I need a diagram. I think about it in terms of building blocks. Like we've got these big things, like get the reproductive thing out of the way, get the private parts out of the way, talk about consent and
Mhm.
and bodies and body safety and boundaries and all of that. But the other mistake parents make is we don't talk about pleasure. The whole point is pleasure. Like the baby making thing, most of the time if we're having that kind of sex, we're like, please, no. Um, Right, please no. And then the other thing too is you get to establish and say, hey, if you're having penis and vagina sex, somebody can get pregnant. And so here's why we plan our pregnancies, right? You can plan a pregnancy and it's not complicated. So if your family value is like, we plan our pregnancies, right? In
Yeah.
our family. So yeah, I mean, I think that, and so then we're saying all this. I'm like, okay, 5, get the party started. And then I know people are listening and they're like, I'm not tired, my party's not
Right.
started,
Right.
and having a little freak out. The good news is there's good news. The kids that are in that sort of tweeny phase, like 9, 12 or whatever, 9 to 12, they understand it more quickly. Like, you
Mhm.
don't have to read the It's So Amazing book or whatever, like, 73 times, right? You can just talk with them openly, and again, you might get some pushback, they might be like, "Oh, I'm totally grossed out," and your job is just to say, "I get it," like you said, "I would not have been delighted to have this conversation, but it is important that you are prepared for this part of life." Right? We think about it in terms of prevention, like, "Don't get knocked up, don't do this, don't do that," but the reality is they're gonna do something. Everybody's done something sexual by the time they're 19, and so if your whole philosophy is, "Let's get you ready."
Well, also, I mean, a couple of things occur to me. That this idea that that parents might be scared if I give them this information that they're going to then run out and do all of this stuff. I would think the opposite of that is true. Like the more knowledge, comfortability they have around it, they may be less prone, or not less prone, but then it's not this mysterious. It's like anything with kids, that kid that grew up and his parents never drank, went to college and just lost his mind because it was just denied even a conversation about it. There's two things I want to ask. One is, so what if you have a kid that's absolutely mortified? Because I agree with you. I'm sure there's some kids I know. I haven't been able to do it as well as my wife has had very frank, comfortable conversations, especially with our girls about sex. But if you have and also moments where they've been totally mortified, I'm sure. What if you have a kid that's just is like, nah, 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 but, not, no, mortified, doesn't want to go
Mhm.
there? I mean, especially if maybe you were a parent that didn't start young and you're kind of trying to come in at 14 when that age is like, get away from me over anything. Amy, do you have some counsel to that parent that's like, my kid just literally won't listen, no, doesn't want to hear any of it?
Well, Julie, I know this is going to sound familiar to you, but one of our best parenting tools is to apologize.
Mm,
Right? To
Yes.
say, "You know what? I am really sorry. I blew it. We should have been talking about this sooner. You need to know. It's really important. Your friends are probably chatting about it. And the more you know about it, the more, accurate information you have, the better you're going to feel, the better you're going to do." And so that can be we want to kick the door open, right? We got the
Yeah.
door open. You can say, "Hey, sorry, should have been talking about this. You're old enough now to know." Really good one. Um, to have this information. So we're going to start talking about it, and we're going to get you books, and we're going to have conversations. And you might be uncomfortable. I might be uncomfortable, and that's okay. And that's
right.
okay.
Mhm.
And so that's all you do. Then you don't launch in, right? You don't launch in.
To a 20-minute speech on sex. Never.
Never ever.
Right.
Never ever. I mean, sometimes they can go that far, but
Sure, sure.
your
Right.
child's leading that, right? And so you've done your like, got the thing going. And then you come back and you say, "Okay, hey, I got you this book with folks in that are tweens. Everybody should have a book about puberty at 9-ish.
Mm,
Girls start puberty as young as 9. And so some people think the first sign of puberty in people with ovaries is their period. It's not. It's breast buds. Their nipples stand out. You're in puberty. With the people with testicles, they stink. Well, that's not true. That's what you're going to notice. They get
right.
go-to farts at my house. It was not pleasant. Um, so then you can have the conversations, and with everybody, short and sweet rules the day. My One of my colleagues says Julie Metzger says it's 200. Sorry, yeah, 200 2-minute conversations, or 2,000.
Mm,
Like
mm,
it's these little short and sweeties. So some strategies: set the timer. Say, "I got you. I got to do this thing 2 minutes." Set your timer.
right.
Plan what you're going to say before you say it. So my book is all scripts. So I give you the words. Over the years, people have said, "Oh, tell me what to say." And so then you have the words and you can say, "Okay, this is what a wet dream is."
Right.
Yeah.
And you say, "This is what this is." You always say, "What do you think?" Thoughts, questions at the end.
Mm.
They are going to do what they're going to do, but what that does is you tells them you got more data, and you're willing to talk about this.
Can
They
I
do not. Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, no, go ahead. Finish your thought. What were you gonna say? They do not what?
They do not like sit down, it's Wednesday, it's hump day, we're going to talk about sex. Like, they don't like that. Like, not this event. Don't make an event out of it. Keep it really casual.
Mm.
And usually everybody does better when you're doing something else. The car is a great place to talk to them, because they're
Yes.
You're
with
saying
you.
so many things that Julie has said. The car,
The
definitely.
car
I
is
I
great.
because there
Parallel activities
you got a
are
captive
great.
audience. I guess Julie, is there anything you would add? Because you've talked a lot about scripting, especially when it's something that if the parent has some anxiety about it. Amy, I think that's so great that you brought that up and that you have that in your book. I know Julie has spoken to that. Is there anything else, Julie, that comes to mind when you think of like a kid that's reluctant? I love short and sweet. You've talked about that
Yeah.
too. It's like you can't overload them, especially with something that's is sort of like heavy, could be heavy for them. I don't know, Julie, is there anything else? I mean, Amy's really covered a lot of it.
Amy's doing great. I mean, this is Amy's focus, in what she does. I mean, the only thing that I would say is sometimes they need to hear the talk with a pillow over their head.
Yes.
You know? So
Yes.
you say, "Listen, I know you don't wanna talk about this. I feel a little uncomfortable talking about it. So I'm gonna sit here and you can put the pillow over your head and you don't have to look at me. I gotta give you this information. It's part of my job as a parent." And,
Absolutely.
if you've got a really reluctant kid, they can still hear through that pillow. I mean, I think
Mm,
that's really important. Parents are like, but they won't hear me. Oh, yeah, no, they will. Because
Yeah.
part of them is curious. What is mom or dad going to say about this? This is so curious, right? So,
mm,
Mhm.
the old saying, curiosity killed the cat. Curiosity also educated the child.
Right.
mm,
Well, I mean, one of my philosophies is that knowledge is empowering.
Yeah.
Knowledge is not power. Knowledge is empowering. If your child is empowered with this information, they do better. They feel better. They
Yeah.
feel better about themselves as a sexual person. And the other thing, I think every parent's goal should be that their kid is the smartest kid in their friend group, the
Yes.
smartest kid on the playground about this information. And so, for example, when Milo in the fifth grade had sex ed, I, of course, was dying to know how it was going.
Yeah.
But I did my grown up parenting and I waited about 3 days and we're walking home from school and I said, "So, how's the sex ed going?" And he said, "Oh, mama, the questions those
mm,
kids have."
mm, mm.
And I said, "Must feel good to already know the answers, huh?" And he just puffed right up. He stood up straighter and he said, "Yeah." And then I said, "What kinds of questions do they have?" And he said, "I'm not telling you." So welcome to my world. So another strategy is, unfortunately, people who are under 12 have phones, so
Mhm,
you can text. That's fine. They may share the information. Fine, as long as it's accurate. And I mean, I think that one of the things about this is that you need to decide. You need to decide, are we going to be this family where our kids are well educated? We talk about sexuality. We talk about our values. We want our kids to be super smarty pants. We want them to be as ready as they can be. And that in and of itself can bring some anxiety because most folks are not doing that,
mhm,
Mhm.
especially in conservative communities. It's
mhm,
a big taboo, but I think that if you look back and think, well, if I'd had more information, I might have made different decisions.
mhm,
Like,
Mhm.
I would have probably, hopefully, made different decisions. I'm guessing everybody thinks that, right? And some folks are super lucky and they had parents that were really good and caregivers who were really good and worked hard to help them have, as much information as possible. I mean, parenting is uncomfortable. We all feel like
mm.
we don't know what we're doing. Thank goodness for, people like you, Julie, and frankly, like me, right?
Yeah, like you too.
Make it
Yeah.
easier, take away some of the anxiety. And the other things, the conversations can just be really funny.
Mm.
Yeah.
And I just posted on, I do something called Help Another Parent on, the socials, and somebody said that I can't quite, their 10-year-old said, "Hey, what's semen?" And then he said, like, "Do you drink it?" And the parents, "Help me." So like funny stuff happens, and it's okay to be lighthearted. And once your kids really know the correct names for their private parts, and I do say private parts because it does send a message, because there is, they're a part of your body that people should not be sharing. When they know all those names, use slang, say tinkle waggle, say hoo ha, say taco, like they know, right? They know, and use them interchangeably. When Milo and I were on his, I don't know if I have permission to tell this at this point, I don't think he'll care, but he was on his way to get his HPV, right?
Uh-huh.
Mhm.
Yeah, you think I'd know, right? HPV shot. We talked about HPV on the way, and I said, this is what it looks like. It's on your penis. So in that circumstance, I did not say it's on your, shamer. Your shamer. Is that terrible?
Yes,
Yeah. Yeah. We don't use that.
right. I would think too that when kids don't have that knowledge, I don't know, the shame kept coming up for me because I think when a lot of times, whether it's with sex or masturbation, if there's some confusion with that with kids, or they don't have the knowledge, or they're getting insane knowledge from friends, that comes to becomes just about shame and embarrassment around it.
Mhm.
And so I'm assuming obviously all of these conversations kind of help with that when it's out on the table. I did want to give a little context to framing in terms of the ages, and I'm sure there can't be like a it's not direct, and I would imagine like if you have a child that's more curious and is asking questions, that will kind of dictate it. But if you say at 5, you start talking about body parts, and then you did mention puberty. I know it's not that strict, but what is it? So if you have that first conversation at 5, then is puberty the next time to really have a big conversation again?
So, with the littles, you need to be talking about bodies, boundaries, baby making. Make sure you talk about the different ways babies are made, different kinds of families. It's okay to talk about sexual orientation and say some people, fall in love with someone who's the same gender, different gender, both genders. Because remember, they're all open,
Mhm.
right? They don't
Mhm.
know. Talking about how their body will grow up, change, like from a kid body to an adult body, making sure they understand that you are the source, right? Like you can ask me anything. This is how we roll in our family. You
Mm,
don't need to be afraid or scared. Um, making sure that they know that if they, so one of the worries is like, hey, like spilled the beans. And then they're like, all right, my kid's going to go to school and tell everyone.
mm,
Maybe. Most of the time, not. And sometimes you have someone who's a little sex educator. And so you just need to be ready for that. And if someone calls and says, hey, your kid told my kid how babies are made and are kind of freaking out, then your job is to say, you know what? And you need to say to your kid, hey, this is not something, this is a conversation we have. We talk about this in our family. Other people feel really weird about it, not us. So it's not your job to tell other kids about this. They
mm,
tell because you can't control them. And then with that parent, you say, oh my goodness, we will remind them that it's not their job. In our family, we believe. And so I call this parent led sex ed. In our family, we believe. And you tell
Mhm.
them why you're doing this. And one of the big reasons to have conversations with kids about this is that it protects them from sexual abuse.
mm.
It's
Yes.
protective, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, Julie's like nodding her head, right?
Oh,
Like
yeah.
it is protective, right? So that for me, when I learned that, I was like, all right, I'm all in. um, so anyway, kind of back to the trajectory.
Trajectory, yes.
It's a little early. So then you want to move into, puberty and making sure they have books and they understand what's going to happen to their body. We're normalizing. You want to always talk about pleasure, like this feels good to grown up bodies. So
Mm,
I'm not saying adults, grown up bodies. It's something that, we'll be talking about and talking about pleasure and talking about consent and letting kids know that it's normal to have sexual feelings, talking about crushes, right? And so by the time they are 12, they should know the basics of everything. So that
mhm,
means birth control, everything that's last name is sex, and talking again, about gender and sexual orientation, which is really like what we're hearing a ton about, especially in, sort of the 10 and overs, sorting that out, working that out, thinking about it, exploring, not experimenting, exploring, understanding that even if you're like, okay, you've been identified as a girl your entire life and now you've changed your name and you want to use he, him, you're using he, him pronouns, you have to roll with it.
yeah.
You
Mhm.
have to roll with it. You can't really tell by looking. And I think this is just an expansion of adolescent exploration. And, just not the greatest analogy is I was a punker.
Mm.
I was a new waver. It was a big part of my identity. Y'all can't see me right now, but maybe you would guess that. Probably not. But it's the same kind of thing. Like, who am I? How do I want to show up in the world? So with queer folks and queer kids, their suicide rate is 4 times higher than the general population.
Yeah.
Nobody wants that. And the number one thing that keeps them on the same, level is parental support.
Can we dive into this a little bit? I'd love to hear Julie's thought too, and Amy, maybe you can talk a little bit more about this. And I guess just like everything else that we've been talking about today is like to dive into it with them. So I have 2 daughters, middle school and high school, and I feel right now wow, this sort of exploration of sexuality and gender and like, literally I've had one of my daughters say to me like, "I don't have a straight friend, dad. Like everyone's bi. Like they're attracted to who they're attracted to." So yeah, I feel like this is a real thing that's going on. And like you said, you being a punk or, I was a theater kid and part of it is, are they trying on identity? So I guess my question is, and Julie, I'd love to hear your thoughts too, because to me, this is part of sex education as well. And you already brought this up, like normalizing for kids that you're attracted to who you're attracted to. These relationships exist in the world. So can you just talk a little bit more about, because it does seem very prominent, at least to me in my own like intimate experience in my family, what's going on at my daughter's schools, just in terms of their exploration and their conversations about it. I mean, I guess I'll just say for myself, and we talk about this too, is I think the first thing is for the parent to get educated and comfortable too, because sometimes I've talked to Julie about this, and I may have even said it to my daughters. Like, to me, it can be confusing. It's not confusing to them; it's confusing to me. So it's been like an exploration of those questions, and I guess my question is then on this topic specifically, as it relates to talking about sexuality, is it about just again diving in with curiosity with your kids about it?
Julie, this
Oh,
feels like this is a place where you have, just that broad strokes about adolescent development and how they're kind of rolling in the world. I mean, I think that for parents hearing that, and then I'll dig into the minutia of what you
Great.
said. So, maybe you've talked about it on the show, but I think a revisit of what's happening in adolescence would be really helpful.
well, I mean, listen, I think parents need to know what's happening in adolescence. Adolescents are pretty clear about what's happening because it's happening to them. So, some of the language that exists around different types of sexualities, pansexual, asexual, bisexual, which has been around, admittedly, for a long time. But there's a lot of language that kids are familiar with and comfortable with because it's existing in their peer group. And I think parents need to do a little bit of catch up, right? Because if by our very nature, if we are a parent of a tween or older, this is not really the environment that we grew up in. If any sex talk happened, and that's a big if in a lot of families, it was certainly heteronormative. It was all heteronormative. There wasn't, it was like, this is the way babies are made. The penis goes in the vagina, the sperm meets the egg, and you do this when you want to have children. And even if like fun was mentioned, it was still heteronormative fun. And parents, I think it's so important that parents leave room for however their child identifies sexually or in terms of gender, so that if the kid begins to be curious about, well, how do people with penises have sex with other people who have penises?
Right, right. And I think, as you look at the whole expansion of just adolescence, it is about this exploration and who am I,
Yeah.
in a broader sense. And I agree with you. Parents need to do their homework, right?
Yes.
Do their homework and understand just broadly about adolescent development and what they're rolling through. And then we have this hotspot, right? Doesn't it feel like a hotspot? And
Mhm.
everything you said is absolutely, absolutely true. And I think the other piece here is that all these sexualities and genders have been around forever and ever. Amen. They were in the closet. They were
Mhm.
in the
Yes.
closet.
Yep.
And
Right.
you're like, you're straight or you're bi. Good luck. And then gender, guy, gal, trans, right? That's all we got.
Exactly.
That's all we got. And so taking the time to do a little research, there's lots of good resources out there. PFLAG is awesome.
P
Yeah.
Um,
flag.
Parents and Friends of Lesbians and Gays has
Mm.
lots of support and help. And so there's lots of places where you can get more information. But the best thing to do is to say to your kids, tell me more. And this is adolescent. So here's one of the things I say about talking with teenagers. You want to use a peer-to-peer communication style. You still are the boss. but peer to peer. So if your friend said, "Yeah, you know what, I don't identify as a woman anymore," and you would say, "Tell me more. What's up?"
Mm,
Yes.
Right? You wouldn't say, "How? Why?
mm,
What the hell? Are you following a trend?"
Or another thing, or are you experimenting, which is a terrible word, but also, parents will say, "Is it something I did?"
Mhm.
That made you trans or gay or whatever, and that's just so wrong. Like,
Right.
this is who this person has been or has evolved to be, and it's not a choice, and it's not something that people do to them.
Right, right. And then, their peer groups, like what we're talking about, and this is happening in more liberal communities, right? I'm in Seattle, and, I've kind of been joking, like every third person who was identified as a girl is now non-binary, right?
mm,
Because it is, I believe there is some peer pressure around it. I did have a mom contact me, and she said, "I don't know what to do, Amy. My daughter's 12, and her entire friend group, they've all changed their gender. They're looking at different genders. They're talking about their sexual orientations. They're not straight. They're not cisgender, which means your gender identity matches your parts." And but my daughter is not into it. She's like, "I am who I am. I don't, this isn't up for me."
Yeah.
And they're pressuring her. So they
mm,
all decided she was bi
mm.
on her behalf. And so there
Oh
is
god.
some peer pressure,
Mhm.
but at the end of the day, they're gonna settle out.
Yeah.
And ultimately, this is a good thing, allowing someone to explore their sexuality, to see what the world is like, and to just feel it out.
Mm.
Hopefully
Mhm.
12 and you're feeling other people out, but just like sorting, like, what does this mean to me? And so at the end of the day, this is going to be a good thing. This is going to be a
Mhm.
good thing, because we're going to have so many more people who are happier, healthier, etc. But in the meantime, we grown folk are like, what is happening? And what does this
Right.
mean? And what did I do? And how can I undo this? You cannot. So talking about, a third person, like, what's up with your friends? How do they feel about this? What are you thinking? Are you worried about anybody? Right? LGBTQ kids have this terrible suicide rate. You're
Right.
worried about anybody? What can we do
Yeah.
for them? What would you like to do? Kind of in charge, kind of not in charge, right? I mean, if somebody's suicidal, and you should say that, if one of your friends is really struggling, please let me know. I will help them get help, right? Yeah, giving them some parameters. And again, it's hard. It's hard, but adolescence is hard. So I think the best thing to do is to take a breath. Take a breath. My pal Joe Langford says, he's a therapist that works with kids who overuse porn, amongst other things. He says, hold it lightly.
Say that again. He says what?
Um, my pal Joe Langford, who's a therapist who works with kids who are overusing porn and have other sexual issues, he says to hold it lightly.
Mm,
Mm.
Hold it lightly. Hold it lightly.
Mhm.
And I mean, part of parenting an adolescent is sucking it up and waiting it out and not getting
Yeah.
triggered, not freaking out at them because you don't understand something. It
Yeah.
can teach us.
yes,
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah, this is all great because you're kind of hitting. I mean, we almost called this podcast "Tell Me More," and Julie always talks about coming from a place of curiosity, and you've like hit that so many times today, and any of the topics that we've covered on this podcast from the very beginning sort of always comes back to that. So
Mm.
I love that you keep kind of going back there in terms of a diving in with them. I'm just some of this is occurring to me as you're talking too, because we also talk about like if you're in a place where you're freaking out, well, then you better take some time and then circle back. If you got to,
Mhm.
if the parent has to figure it out, then that's on you to go away and deal with your upset, talk to your friend or your therapist, and then circle back so you can come from a place of curiosity. Julie, did you want to say something?
Yeah, just that one of the things that I preach and practice is underreact. Practice underreacting. So that when your kid comes to you and they say, I'm going to get my labia pierced, you underreact. You walk away, you scream into a pillow, whatever you need to do, but then whatever allows you to come back and then approach with curiosity. Because it probably won't be piercing their labia, because that's probably not something they're going to tell you. But it covers a whole host of other things. All of the things that when we grew up as parents were not talked about, which were out things that were out there, but nobody talked about them. Everybody was closeted, or a lot good portion of people were closeted. So that when your kid comes to you and says something, I'm pansexual, which has happened a number of times to parents in my group. Their kids have come and said, I'm pansexual. And the parent underreacts and says, thank you for sharing that with me. I'm glad you trust me with that information. And then they go, what the heck is pansexual? And then they can figure it out and then
Mm.
go back with more knowledge and approach with curiosity around it.
Yeah, exactly. And just to define pansexual, someone who's pansexual is attracted to the person. They don't care about their gender or their parts. They're attracted to the person in a
Mhm.
broad sense. And
Mhm.
the other thing too, absolutely, is like keep your poop in a group, right? And then you can say, thanks for telling me. I'm having a little freak out here. So I need to go calm down and think about how I want to talk about this with you. And so, what you're demonstrating is how you self soothe, how you show up for somebody when you don't understand something. And then you have to come back within 48 hours. You have to come back and say, okay, I got this sorted. Tell me more about this. What does this mean? This is
Mm.
new to me. I want to support you. And then have the conversation. And so that is again is establishing trust, right? And you're also
Mhm.
demonstrating what you do when you get surprise news that you're freaked out about.
Mm.
And it's okay to say, okay. And if you find yourself and you're like, what the? And you just, the second you catch yourself, say, oh my God, I am so sorry. I was just really surprised to hear you tell me about this. Tell me more. What does this mean? And then as you find yourself getting hot and getting freaky, say, okay, I just can tell you right now, I just need to think about this some more. I love
Right.
you. I'm here for you. And I gotta go, scream in my
Hmm.
pillow.
Can I want to jump in with a couple more things before we end. Pornography came up. It's so prevalent these days. It's so
Yeah.
easily accessible. You mentioned even your therapist friend who's dealing with kids. What is your advice around that discussion? Are
Mm.
you should parents be monitoring the internet and checking their history? Is it more about having a conversation about it? Because, back in the day, maybe you'd be lucky if you found an old Playboy out in the woods. And now it's unbelievable what's accessible on every single device within 5 seconds.
Yeah. So, um, why don't you have me back and we'll do a whole porn talk?
Yeah, we should. We will.
Because
Okay.
it's bigger than this. So I want everybody to just take a little breath here
Mm,
because I got some news. Here we go. I'm not kidding. I do a lot of
Yeah.
breathing when I teach because it's anxiety inducing. So yeah, average age of porn exposure we think is 9.
mm,
It happens accidentally. I had a client whose kiddo Googled horses and made her way to porn.
mm,
If you're bored, Google horses, go to images. If you've never seen an erect horse penis, you can't unsee things. Then Google
Mm.
horse penis, and then in a hot minute, you're going to be in the porn. Um, that's the first thing. Nobody escapes childhood without seeing porn.
mm.
It is a fact. It is a
Mhm.
fact of childhood now. So the best defense is a good offense. I don't ever know if I
That's
say
right.
that because
Yep.
it's sports. So you need to talk to them about it before they see it, ideally. And with little people, you just say, hey, you can on the internet, you can see videos of naked people. It is not okay or safe for kids to see this. You should let me know. You won't be in trouble. When they know what sex is, you can say people having sex. And people like to watch this because it gives them sexual feelings, but it is not okay or safe for kids. It can really mess you up. Your heart, your mind, your body are not ready to see things like that. Older, you're going to go into detail about how it works in the brain and what it can mean for them as a sexual person. And so just assume they're going to see it. And people love to have their little heads in the sand about this, but put yourself in your 10-year-old body, mindset, head. I would have Googled all the sex things.
Yeah. Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
100%.
Oh, yeah.
Your kids are the same. And then if they have a friend on the playground or whatever who says, hey, porn, your kid's going to be like, porn. So to your question, monitoring and filtering. Monitoring is watching, so you can see everywhere they're going. Monitoring is on all the time. All the time. If they're in your household, you're monitoring. Now, when they get to 17, 18, it's an invasion of their privacy. And so you do need to probably take it off, but your child, if your child has a problem, you're going to need to keep it on. The filtering should start out really, really, really tight. So they literally can't go anywhere. As they get older, you loosen it up. And by the time they're in middle school, they should be able to go anywhere they want on the internet, but you know where they're going. And it's not spying. They know what's happening. There's some really good products that we'll put in the show notes to help with that. It is required. It is required. And the reason is that it is your job to keep your kids safe. And I don't want your child. I mean, you don't need your kids having sex with three people. They don't need to see that, three
Right.
people and a goat. I mean, that is a possibility. And so talking about how it's not real, nobody's body looks like that. They don't make those sounds. People don't have sex like that. It's not real. So being very explicit about it. And yeah, it might increase their curiosity, but that's why you have books about sex and sexuality. You point them to the healthy stuff and you talk to them about what's healthy. So I get very frustrated because parents don't believe me. And you know what? One of the last things you want is a kid to get a phone call from a parent that says your kid showed my kid porn.
Right.
It is zero fun.
Right.
Zero fun. And you're setting an example, right? So just a couple of tips. So if your kids are, sort of like 11, 12 and under, when they're going to somebody's house to hang out, especially if they're little, you should ask them, what monitoring and filtering are you using? And you want to clear. We use Bark, we use Custodio, we use Circle. We use all the devices have their internal free, filtering and stuff. You want a very clear answer. You don't want to hear, oh yeah, we should do that. We trust our kids. No.
Right.
No, you do not trust your kids. And so do they like it? No. Do we care? No. They're not the boss. They're not in charge of this. So I could go on and on and on. I have lots of stats and information and other ways to talk about this with them. So it's really vitally important because it's so pervasive. And the biggest thing you can do is talk with them openly about healthy sexuality. So preparing them, right? Preparing them for this part of life. Preparing them for the yucky stuff, right? And the hard stuff. They'll do better. They'll feel better.
Why don't we end with, because we talked a little bit about the conversations you have at 5 and then in puberty and the tweens, and how does this conversation shift? You mentioned a little bit even with the porn, like they have more agency, they have more privacy. How does the conversation shift when they're in high school?
So the glory of them knowing everything by 12 or so is you don't need to filter. You don't need to filter. Just talk about everything and use the world around you. Like when you watch a movie, if there's a moment where you're like, hey, I loved that, then say later, like, remember when this happened? That was awesome. Or you're watching something else and you're like, yeah, that was sexual harassment. or like use the world around you, ask them what's up with their friends. That third person thing, I know, Julie, you know this, right? That third person thing is magical because it can get down to them. Do not be afraid of this. It's so nice. I could not wait to get everything in Milo. So, I mean, we were really open anyway, but I was like, okay, I've got permission to just say the things, talk about the things, not going to hurt them. Not going to hurt them, mostly because we did not have what we needed. So it's really hard for us to do TMI. One of the ways you know you're like hitting it is if you do get that sort of sweaty upper lip and a little like, ha, 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 you're on it.
Can I
You're
ask
on
you,
it.
when you say third person, do you mean like, "Hey, Milo, what's going on with Jeff and his girlfriend?" Is that third
Mhm.
person? Right, right.
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you think about their relationship?
Are they
How's
having
that going for
sex?
them?
Right,
Right?
right.
How's that going for them? Birth control? What do you think? And, they may say, I don't know, or whatever, but you're doing a seed planting. It's like, well, if people have penis and vagina sex, everybody needs to know about the birth control and everybody needs to be involved in making sure it's happening, right?
Yeah.
You just little seed plant.
But that's a conversation that did you say the birth control conversation is one you have earlier on around in puberty? Is that's when that
Oh, yeah,
conversation
sure.
happens? Right.
Like, if we're having sex for pleasure 99.99% of the time and pregnancy is on the table, you need to say, so 99.99% of the time, people are having sex because it feels good, because it's fun, it's a way they can connect. Definitely later for later in life, my hope is that when that happens for you, if it happens for you, that it's with somebody that you love and trust and can communicate with. And then you say, and you can get pregnant. So there's a thing called birth control, which makes it so the person has way less likely to get pregnant. And you can say, you do it in order: IUD, implant, pills, you do patch, pills, you do it in order of effectiveness.
Hmm.
Mm.
IUD all the way.
Hmm.
It is super hard. It is super hard, but people are a little weird about having a thing stuck up in their uterus. But yeah, so
Do you feel like experimentation or advancement in sexuality, like kids starting earlier, is that a myth or do you think that's true? Like in 2022, because I feel like I've heard that, like, oh, these days girls are, blowjobs are going on when they're 12. And is that your experience? Like, is it starting earlier in 2022?
well, we might have more data. Of course, they have not had access to each other, which has been a good thing, in that respect. Yeah, I think I'm trying to remember. I think is that median age where you line everybody up and you pluck the person from the middle. I think
Hmm.
the median age for sexual activity is about 14. So that means people are doing it on either end,
Hmm.
right? Nobody wants a 12-year-old. Well, I don't given a BJ, because coercion, they don't know what they're doing, that kind of thing, and they're just way too young.
Right.
Um, so just assume your kid's going to do something sexual. Absolutely, they're going to do something sexual. And then talking about, why it's important to wait and what kind of relationship they should be in, and being really open about, the risks too of doing that. I mean, your reputation, right? I mean,
Right.
that stuff doesn't go away. And then, the damn social media,
Hmm.
right? That
Mhm.
gets around and, they know that, but it isn't necessarily, they're not if then thinker. So, right. So like, if I blah, then blah.
Right.
It's like,
Right.
if I neek, if I post this about someone else, so, I think the like worrying about when it's starting in terms of the kids' sexual behaviors is a good thing in a lot of ways, which that tells you that's why everything by 12,
Right. And get that conversation
right? Get
started.
it
Yeah.
going. And you're not the Kama Sutra. Like you don't say, this is what oral sex is, this is how you do it. Right. No.
um, So why don't let's wrap up. We do this every episode and it can be difficult. And Julie, I'd like you to do this as well because you obviously have a lot of experience in this arena. We'll start with you, Julie. So we've just had a pretty wide encompassing conversation about this, obviously. Parents who have just listened to this episode, if there's one thing you could have them walk away with, like keep this one thing in mind. If you want to hold on to this one seed, keep this in mind in terms of how you talk to your kids about sexuality. Julie, what would you say?
I think I would say that we need to remember and hold on to the fact that human beings are sexual beings. We start out being sexual beings. And I don't mean having sex, but I mean even young children masturbate because it feels good. We are
Hmm.
beings that are oriented towards that pleasure. And later on, when we're old enough, it serves for procreation and that kind of thing. But if we recognize that we're all built for this, built to experience pleasure from our genitals, right? Then I think that makes it easier to talk about because we can start when we see them playing with themselves, at age 2 or 3 in the bath. And we can say, you know what? That feels good. And I get that. And that's called masturbation. And we don't do it in public. And, we don't do it in front of even one other person. It's a private thing that you can do, but it feels good. And that opens that conversation up like from a very young age, I think.
Amy?
Preparation, preparation, preparation. Imagine who you would be if you had a trustworthy adult that was taking care of this for you, that was really working to help make sure you were as ready as you could be. And I like I like tiny homework. So one of my tiny homeworks is to have that conversation. Like, what did you need? What was this like for you?
Hmm.
And then what do you hope for your kids? And that helps with that preparation piece. So
Mhm.
remember, you're preparing them again for one of the biggest parts of life. And you're showing them that you are trustworthy. If you're able to talk about this, they're going to come to you if they are having issues with all kinds of things because they see that you're willing. So, that would be my biggest thing is preparation, preparation, preparation. And then my little homeworks are going to help you clear the crap
Great.
and
Mhm.
focus.
Well, this has
Right?
been wonderful. We really appreciate you being here. So much great information today. I want to remind everyone again, our guest today is Amy Lang, and her book, which I'm sure has some homework in it, probably has some great info in it. I'm sure. No, a little homework. No, just good chapters.
Just
Okay,
do it is the homework.
just do
Just
it. Just have the conversation. All right. The book is called Sex Talks with Tweens: What to Say and How to Say It. And if you'd like to learn more about Amy's work or connect with her, she has a website. It is birdsandbeesandkids.com. You can also email her at amy@birdsandbeesandkids.com. There's also a freebie button on her website that if you click on that, you can download something called 7 Great Tips for Sex Talks, which I'm sure would be helpful. Thank you, Amy. This has been great.
yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for trusting me with your people.
Oh, absolutely. Thanks for listening to the Parenting Horizons podcast.
If you enjoyed today's episode, please share with your family and friends. And if you'd like to hear more about Julie's work, join one of her parenting groups, or see about individual counseling, please visit parentinghorizons.com, or you can email Julie at julie.ross@parentinghorizons.com.
We'll see you next time.